All right, so we are here with Arron Blankenship, the athletic director of Fairfield City Schools, a large Division One district located just north of Cincinnati. Welcome, Arron. If you could maybe just give us a little bit about your background and what you do as the athletic director over at Fairfield City Schools.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me. Yeah, just a brief background. I been involved in sports my whole life, really in sports and education, from coaching and teaching. But now, obviously, here as the district athletic director, just an exciting time to obviously be involved in athletics. But the day-to-day, obviously, similar to probably most people who are listening here, obviously is ever changing due to COVID. But, one of the biggest things that I ever see is really all the athletics throughout the district. So when it comes to the community aspects of athletics and what that means what it means for us on a Friday night versus what it means for, the student life here at the high school, making sure that we're always trying to offer opportunities to all our student athletes and offering opportunities for our community to engage in that athletics and support us as a school district. Athletics kind of serves an interesting piece and connects in so many ways other than just the game itself. And so that's kind of the fun part of this job is, you get to help out with some of that Fairfield pride is what we call it, and making sure that's seen throughout the entire community.
That's awesome. So let's jump in. So you mentioned kind of athletics has changed a lot in the last 6 months. I think that we see that on the periphery, and you live that every day. How do you see maybe in the last 6 months, how has your personal view or maybe the impact that you see athletics having, in the school district and on the students and your program overall? How's your view changed of athletics and maybe the impact that athletics has, that maybe you didn't think that it really had?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, if nothing else, it's solidified just how important athletics are to our community. It's something that, if we start with our student athletes at the high school level, just a great opportunity, I think for most of us here in Ohio, and I know this was the case, I think, pretty much nationwide, but our heart goes out to our seniors who, worked so hard and didn't get a chance to play their spring season last spring due to COVID. But, to see the impact that had on them, but obviously their families and how much this is something that, not only the parents, but grandparents, extended family look forward to, senior nights, and they look forward to, the different traditions that every school has or every sport has. But for me, I think on a closer note, we've just seen our student athletes just long for the need. They're really longing for their relationships with their peers, longing for an ability to connect with their coaches again, to have just that structure in their life of, I think for all of us who played sports, there's certain aspects of practice or a game that we didn't like. For me, it was the sprints at the end. I knew they were coming. But it was one of those things where I think for our athletes, they found themselves, as we were able to talk with a lot of them, they found themselves missing just the little nuances of a game day or the practice or just the opportunities to connect with their peers that, you and I both know just aren't the same over Zoom or over another online format or over a group text. So, that was obviously a big part. And I think for our community is chomping at the bit to understand if we're going to have a fall sports season or not. It's a huge, night for us whenever we host a volleyball game or a boys or girls soccer, and I think for us, football is, definitely not the most important sport. I would never be an AD that says that, but I would say that, I always say it's the second through sixth biggest party that we host in Fairfield. It's right behind the 4th of July fireworks. And so it's something that drives the whole community out. This year, it looks like if it happens, it will be very, very different. But those are the types of things you miss. And you start thinking of the gate workers and the ticket takers and the referees and the coaches. And for us and we think of the fall, the cheerleaders and the band, there's so much that goes into it. And the long answer to your question is it just solidified that this is so important to what we do as a society and such an important piece of our high school experience for our kids.
It's a really interesting answer. What I heard you say, and what it connected with me. I heard you say the students are losing memories and families are losing memories. I mean, I think back to when I was in school and playing sports, and those are some of the things that I have the most vivid memories of, or going to one of my kids' football games or my daughter's volleyball game. Those are memories that I have, right? And losing those memories, you don't think about it, but they're gone.
Yeah, and I think for us, it was such an interesting piece of, we jumped to the games. Hey, they won't have a chance to play in the games, but it was just so interesting to hear from our student athletes about, the bus rides and, hey, we won't be able to go to, play at this fun field, or won't be able to play at home, or my parents won't be able to walk me out on senior night. So, as an athletic department, we tried to do kind of everything we could to replicate that. To give the spring students a chance to kind of have that moment the best we could. But graduation was something that was obviously impacted around these parts as well. But you're absolutely right. The memories were a huge piece that, are missing right now.
The other thing, and probably for our audience that I heard you say, I mean, the relationships with the students, I'm going to come back to that maybe here in a minute, but the community engagement and community involvement. So as you think about other things that community leaders, business leaders can do, have you seen anything? Have you had any discussions? How do you try to fill some of that void and gap of the loss that happens, from not being able to participate and going to the Friday night, local football game?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for us, we've started to dabble in really where we're at right now is looking at if we do have athletics in the fall, is there an opportunity that we can still connect with our community? One of the biggest things that we're trying as a large district here is we're looking in streaming. And how do we stream the games and how do we stream those events to our local community? My hope is that, we're able to figure it out, and it's something that, as far-fetched as it sounds, that at the local sports bar, they're able to show our game on the TVs there. So when we're at potentially, similar to Ohio State, we're thinking that, we're thinking it's probably going to be about 20% of our seating capacity, which, in the pre-COVID days, and we were blessed to have some great talent last year and really some great talent the past few years, and put together a successful football program. We were well over 100% of our seating capacity. We were probably close to, 150 or 160 just based on standing room only. And that was just part of the experience that made Fridays great is, you got there early, you tried to get a seat. And if you didn't, then, there were places to stand and you were still part of the action. Right. So you're absolutely right. I mean, that's something that, I don't know if we can recreate the, what it sounds like to hear the drum line as you're approaching the stadium, or to smell the popcorn or anything like that. But, our hope is that we can still connect. When it comes to businesses, that's something that I think the whole town will be watching. I don't know at that point on a Friday night if we're going to have college football or pro football. My hope is that, we're able to return to some normalcy. But, it is going to be something that's neat and something that, I think in terms of a business leader, they could easily connect with advertising or opportunities for us to showcase how we've connected over these past few months on the Friday night broadcasts.
And what I hear you saying is maybe as a business leader, what used to be more of a passive participation of just coming and attending, maybe it needs to be more of an active participation to help fill some of that void.
Absolutely. I think, that's a huge point for us, for going back to that attendance piece. Obviously the 20% attendance goes across the board for all of our fall sports. And I don't know if that number's for certain yet, but it sounds like it's hovering around that. I think it was originally around 50. Now we're around 20%. And, we may even closer to 0%, who's able to attend in the fall. And so for your average athletic department, that is where probably 80% of their income comes from, is from the attendance at their games and their gate and ticket sales. I know for us, it was a big initiative that I pushed last year of trying to do season tickets and making that a whole experience, similar to if you're at the Horseshoe or similar somewhere else. There's a season ticket dinner, and there's an opportunity for you to connect with other people who had season tickets. That's probably not going to be the case this year. And so I think you're absolutely right. There's plenty of opportunities for businesses to get out there and to connect with their local high schools, and to probably really end up in a really great position when they do.
That's awesome. So one thing that as we talk with business leaders, we hear a wide variety of where their employees stand as it relates to COVID, how they, fears related to COVID. And so from, on one side of the spectrum, some employees say this is overblown. Other side of the spectrum, some employees saying, I don't want to be around anybody else. So a lot of different views and passionate views around that. I would think in your position, you see that so much every day. What are some of the ways that you try to kind of incorporate the concerns and fears from both sides of those who have strong opinions of COVID, but then how do you try to also make sure that you're kind of managing to the middle audience?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think it's a tightrope that a lot of leaders are dealing with, and you're absolutely right. And I think it's something that crosses over from business to education to, really any sector that you're in. But, I think for us is just making sure that we're following the guidelines that are put in place by, for us, it's OSHA and our local board of health. But, even still, I think just the important part of our rollout, and our rollout meaning that, we've been able to have kids here on campus doing workouts since the end of May. When we first started that was pretty revolutionary. Now I think if you go around this weekend to different parks, you're going to see Little League teams playing. And I think we're a little bit more open, a little more used to that. But I just remember it being such a huge part of the rollout process, as us having these conversations and communicating well to our parents and to our student athletes of, hey, COVID is a very real and serious thing. On the flip side, hey, here are the precautions that we're taking. Here are non-negotiables. And, I think the interesting part we have right now is that our student athletes, our parents, our coaches, they want to be out there. They've experienced life without each other. They've experienced life without sport. And so when we say, hey, these are the precautions that we're putting into place, maybe 2 years ago, it would be something, or even 6 months ago, someone would scoff at. Now it's, hey, that makes sense to me. Let's keep us safe. Let's make sure we're doing everything we can to have a season here in a few weeks. And so the buy-in there is really easy, but, I think my advice would be just our communication was we tried to really over-communicate the best we could to our student athletes, to our parents, and just explaining the why behind everything, knowing that we're not doctors and we're not scientists, but making sure they understood this is why we're doing it. And at a minimum, it was, hey, we're doing this because we want to have a season.
Wow, that's great. So you probably didn't expect when you took this role to have such a large component of your role related to health. You've become kind of a health expert, I'm sure, in this role.
Absolutely.
So how do you prepare? I mean, those regulations, they come fast, they change, they're unpredictable. How do you stay current on those? How do you adopt them quickly? How do you stay responsive?
Yeah, I think for us, we here in the education world, and especially I think in the athletic world, we've kind of borrowed some strategies that you see really more in the business world, networking and making sure we're part of groups that, we're accountable to each other, and that we're obviously keeping each other as informed as we can. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I think for us, the guidelines have come quick. I think when we talked about us rolling out workouts back in May, we started on a Tuesday. It was the Tuesday after Memorial Day. So there with that weekend. But I think we got the guidelines probably late Wednesday night or Thursday morning. And so we were lucky to be in a position where We were following the trends. We were following, in some places the breadcrumbs, in some places the real honest truth. And we ended up in a place where we were able to hit the ground running. We felt like we had told our student athletes for a long time, the moment we can have you back out, we're going to do it. And we wanted to hold ourselves to that. And so, some of that is just making sure, your communication, your relationships, and your culture within your organization is there to be ready to move and to be agile and flexible to change on a dime. But yeah, that's been a huge piece. And, I think right now we're all in this situation, especially when it comes to high school athletics, and I guess athletics in general, just we're waiting for some guidance, and we're waiting to bend and move whenever we need to.
Well, and it sounds like you, as a leader yourself, have had to really develop a comfort in making decisions with a lot of ambiguity, and being really comfortable and making some big decisions without the information that you need. Kind of talk through how comfortable was that for you? Maybe how did that stretch you personally a little bit? And what have you personally learned going through that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Yeah, I think I always knew that in this role, I think it's just as any leader, you're going to have to make decisions, and you have to make decisions that are at times difficult. I think this has been a growing experience, is probably a good way to put it, of figuring out, what that's like when we don't have all of the information, when we have some ambiguity, as you put it. That's a great way of putting it. So, I think for me, there are a lot of pieces there. I think some of it obviously is in the moment when decision making, but, I think for us in our athletic department, we really just pride ourselves in our relationship and the culture that we're trying to build. It's something that, I think it's moments like these, you can't just create culture, and you can't create these great relationships. I think some of our relationships grew stronger during this time. But I don't think I could just instantly make it just because of these things happening or some difficulty. So I think that this has been a time for us where, I just talked to some of our staff about, man, I feel really, really good about our relationships with our coaches, with our student athletes, and in the direction we're heading. This has been a really great indicator during this time, even though it's been tough, of, hey, we're moving in that right direction. But and I think so many business leaders talk about it, but, you just want to make sure you have the right people on the bus, per se. For us, it's been so important to have the right coaches and to have the right people within our organization. And they make everything easier when you have people that have the common driven purpose, and they want to do what's right, and they care about kids. That makes such a difference for us. And, that's been a huge piece of this whole process, and why we've been successful, is just because there are great people here, and they want to do great things for kids, and a lot of the other stuff takes care of itself. But when you make some of those decisions, it's a lot easier when you're turning to your left and your right, and you're seeing people that you really trust, and that, hey, we may look up a week from now, it may be a wrong decision, but you know what, I trust these guys, and I feel a lot better with them next to me going into this decision.
I was sitting in a client's conference room over the last couple of days, and they had a quote on the wall that said, "Great sailors aren't made by sailing smooth seas," right? Yeah. And so when you have a really strong group of people around you, those challenging experiences are really going to bond you guys and make you really strong.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So last question I have is kind of going back to the impact on student athletes. And I think that personally, I saw a lot of benefit and a lot of my own development come through sports, at a young age. And I know that you see that every day. For those students that are maybe missing out, or maybe students who decided this year not to participate because of the uncertainty, or is there even going to be a season? I don't want to go through the practice if I don't even know if a season's going to happen. Maybe if you could kind of speak to, are you seeing that? And then follow up to, how is going through this period impacting the development of students and the future workforce?
Yeah, that's a great question. Absolutely, we're seeing that. We're seeing that This is a very, very difficult time for our students and their families. There's a lot of anxiety, and there's a lot of stress, a lot of worry about whether there is going to be an upcoming season, and what does that look like if I get COVID or someone else gets COVID, or I'm the one who gets it and we have to quarantine the team. I mean, there's some pressure there that I think there's always pressure in high school. It's something about that time in life, but this is on a whole nother level. And I think you mix that with the tough position that kids have not been around each other a lot, at least in a formal structure. I think that makes it very difficult, in terms of what does that look like for, our future workforce is, I think we talked about a little bit earlier. I think some of those memories, like you mentioned, are gone, but I think some of the lessons are potentially gone as well. I think for us in terms of athletic department, we've tried to figure out ways that we can connect with the student athletes still, even beyond, sports. We here just really hope that we're good stewards of this time in a kid's life, knowing that the ages of 13 to 18, especially here at our high school, are so impactful. They're so important. And, I think if we probably did a poll of the folks that are listening, they would note that, that's when you probably made a lot of poor decisions and were a knucklehead at times, but also a lot of the foundation of your life and your work ethic. And, this is how I meet people. This is how I talk to that cute girl. And all of this is how I overcome adversity. A lot of those things were things that we weren't necessarily taught in class, but we learned it during that time in our lives. And so I think for us, that's going to be our biggest question, is thinking about how do we own that space in our kids' lives as an athletic department if we don't have seasons, or if the seasons look different. One of the biggest things we're trying to do is help students build leadership skills. What does that look like for us to help build the next leaders of our community if our coaches aren't able to teach those lessons on a regular basis on the field or on the court? What can we do with technology to do that? How can we still make student athletes feel important? One of the things we did in the spring is we did an online virtual award show, where we brought in people much cooler than me to give the kids awards and to talk about their season. And it's just one more reminder that, hey, you're important, and hey, what you did before was really cool, and we want to celebrate that. It's a chance for us to do some senior nights for our spring athletes. But what does that look like for us in the fall? What does that look like for a new batch of student athletes that may or may not ever hit the field? And so that's something that I know that my staff thinks about a lot, and something that we're hoping to address here in the future. Not knowing if we'll meet with our student athletes in person or it's Zoom or what it would be, but I think that's a key piece for employers in the future is we're going to have potentially some of those lessons missed out on, some of those social skills, in a key time in students' lives missed out on. And so how can we as adults help them, those of us who are in the education world, how do we, again, be good stewards of this time? And how can we make sure that, when they're leaving Fairfield or they're a Fairfield alum that's played a sport, that we know that we have gone over the leadership opportunities with them, and and they are ready for the quote unquote real world that's about to be at their fingertips.
Yeah, one thing that I was thinking when you were describing that, I think of some of the best role models of leaders that I've had growing up were coaches, right? And so if you were to take away that experience, I would have lost out on maybe that, seeing that coach who was an awesome leader, lead me and others.
Absolutely.
And so maybe as a business leader, so how could a business leader, a community leader step in, and whether it's employing a high school student and giving them an example of how you lead and letting them see, so there may be some, or even as an uncle or as a parent and a friend's child, and so what are some things that we all need to do to help supplement some of those awesome things you're doing virtually with other programs, so they can see leadership skills in action.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for example, things that have come to our mind is just the mentorship aspect, and
Mm-hmm.
what can that be for, the business leaders of Fairfield or the surrounding areas or alumni, to be able to invest in some of our youth. I think
Mm-hmm.
especially, for our different students, and for us, some of us, we've had difficult roads, or some of us were great students, and some of us were great athletes, and some of us were mediocre at both. But how do we give our students a great opportunity to see people who have done great things? That, hey, maybe I was squirrely, or maybe I was a dork in high school, or maybe I was this or that, or I barely played, but hey, these are the life lessons that I learned, and this is where I am today. And I wish I would have known X, Y, and Z. And I think that would be one of the easiest ways. Even if it's coming in and talking, even like this over Zoom, with a group of students, or with a team, or as this season goes on, supporting a team or supporting them in a variety of ways. There's just a lot of different opportunities for leaders to help out, no doubt.
That's great. Yeah, if there's anybody who can connect with a mediocre player, it's me.
That's funny.
So, well, Arron, this has been great. You've added such insight and perspective, and it's interesting to hear your answers. And as we have conversations with business leaders, it's a lot of those concepts you're using and a lot of the challenges you're facing, they're the same. And so sometimes we don't realize how closely we are aligned, with some of those, educators and leaders and schools. You guys are facing a lot of the same things, and doing great, doing just a great job of some of the stuff you're doing. So keep on after it, man. We're cheering for you.
Great. Thank you for filling this void here, and helping business leaders connect, and obviously giving us an education opportunity to share our platform and share a little bit about what's going on here. So I appreciate you bridging the gap there.
Awesome. Go Fairfield. Hope you guys have a great season. Hope you guys get on the field.
Right. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it.